Good evening, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Programs and Services Committee. It is Wednesday, January 22nd. We are being audio and video recorded. And for those joining us just now, please know that I'm happy to see Councilor Lobovitz here. Okay, we have three items on our agenda. First item is item 447-24. This is the appointment of Sam Fiegler to the Licensing Board. Mr. Fiegler, good to see you here. Two things. One, if I've mispronounced your name, I apologize and please correct me. Two, the process we will follow for both of our appointees is we usually give you an opportunity to say why it is that you're interested in serving in this capacity. Then I open it up to councilors to ask any questions that they may have of you. And then we'll proceed to take a vote within the committee. So with that said, Mr. Fiegler, tell us why it is that you're interested in serving on the licensing board.
Good evening, and the name is Fiegler. You're pretty close, and I've been called a lot worse. So that's not bad. I'm interested in serving on the licensing board because now that my youngest child has aged out of youth sports, I find myself with a lot more time on my hands, and I've been looking for ways to give back to the city. I've been involved in different things around town, including the Parks and Recreation Commission, which I was on for about 10 years, and the Newton Commonwealth Foundation, which manages the golf course. But this opportunity, I think, is really interesting for me because it has, a bit of a legal bent to it. And I am a recovering lawyer and, was looking for something that had a little bit more of a flavor of the legal realm to it. And that's really kind of the long and the short of it. I'm familiar with the board's work, and many years ago, I did actually practice in front of a regulatory body like it when I was in Washington, D.C. And I think I have a good feel for what they do, and it seems as though they've done a lot of good work, given we don't hear very many issues coming from kind of their realm. So hopefully I could continue keeping up that good work.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Fiegler. Let me just quickly introduce the members of the committee who are here. I should have done that earlier and I was remiss in not doing it. I'm Josh Krinsman. I'm the chair of the committee from Ward 4. The vice chair of the committee, Councilor Bill Humphrey, councilor from Ward 5, is here. Councilor Lyle Baker, our ward councilor from Ward 7. Here, Councilor Julia Maliki from Ward 3, Councilor Alan Lobovitz from Ward 6, and Councilor David Mickley from Ward 2, as well as Councilor Stephen Farrell from Ward 8, or at least someone identifying as Councilor Stephen Farrell online. Mr. Fiegler, let me turn it over to the greatest lawyer on the city council to possibly speak man to man with you, Councilor Baker.
Thank you. I know I'm the greatest, but I'm the oldest, so I'll take it. I'll go that way. I'm delighted to see you come forward. I've seen your work on the golf course. I just hope that you don't find yourself leaving that role, because I think it's essential you stay there as well. So I just want to clarify that you're not giving up one post for another.
No, thank you for that. I love my work on the golf course. I think, we've come a long way in a short time, and, I think there's still a lot more to do, however, and I look forward to helping out there too.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Fiegler, you must have had several kids to be looking to make up that much time through committee work on two committees. Not the kids are gone, but I don't know, maybe I'm misjudging.
I had, truth be told, I had 3 very active kids that were keeping me really busy for a long time. And, and now I'm down to 1 in the house, and, so I have lots of time.
Far more manageable. And if it's like my family, the third kid basically raises themselves, you kind of ignore them because you really don't have time. So I'm seeing no other hands. I will just say that I also went to law school in Washington, D.C., a far lesser institution than you, sir. But I always support someone who both went to school, undergrad in Massachusetts, and law school in Washington, D.C., because that's my lineage as well. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Councilor Baker has moved approval. Any discussion on that motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Mr. Fiegler, I think you know the drill. This will go to the full city council, which is the next meeting is, I think, in a week and a half, at which we expect the full council to approve the nomination. You don't have to stick around. You're welcome to. We have a great time on this committee. We never disagree about anything, as you can tell if you watched the city council meeting last night. But you're also welcome to, close the laptop and go about your business. We won't be offended. The next item we have is
very good. Thank you very much for the vote of confidence and support.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Next item is item 6-25. This is the appointment of Claire Wadlington to the Newton Community Education Commission. Ms. Wadlington, same to you. If I've mispronounced, please correct me. And let me now give you an opportunity to say why it is that you're interested in serving in this capacity, and then we'll open it up to the committee members. You're still on mute, unfortunately. I'm sure you're saying wonderful things that we'd love to hear.
I was complimenting you on your pronunciation, thanking you for it.
I knew
Correct.
it.
So,
Great.
Claire Wadlington, I've lived in Newton for almost 33 years. I realize my kids went through Ward, Bigelow, and North, and I've been active as on the board of the Ward After School, as a Liger Bots mentor, as a Transition Together mentor in educational things in Newton. In the past, my kids don't live here anymore. They're 25 and 29. And I've been active in education in general. I'm the board of a small college in Boston, Benjamin Franklin Cummings Institute of Technology, and was previously on the board of WGBH Community Advisory Board. So the Newton Community Education Commission, when I looked at ways to think about getting involved in Newton, it was the thing that spoke to me. I've taken classes in Newton and Cambridge, other types of things. And I did not realize that my financial background, I have been a CFO and involved in growing and restructuring companies would also be helpful, because I know there's a little excitement going on with their budget at this point.
Indeed. So you've been following the Newton Education Commission for a little while?
I submitted my interest in the summer, and I went to a few commission meetings, and I've actually been looking with the executive director at some of their financials and asking a lot of questions and thinking about how they could perhaps even communicate the information a little differently to be clearer about what's going on. And I listened to some city council, some school committee meetings.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Any counselors have any questions or comments to make? That's a joke, by the way. Big fan of the school committee. Just kidding. Sorry. Councilor Mickley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thanks for your interest in this opportunity. It seems like you have a really great background across various business experiences, and just wondering if you have any ideas for improving either the financial standing, program growth, outreach. Seems like there's a lot of opportunities and obviously some challenges we heard about in the winter. So just wondering your thoughts.
I have a lot of ideas. I am trying to restrain myself a little bit and understand which ones have been tried before jumping in whole hog. And I know also that financially, it's the way it's been, the books have been carried for the last few years, sometimes programs. So with an accounting background in the for-profit sector, usually you match like when revenue comes in and when expenses are paid. It doesn't exactly happen here. So my first step is like understanding completely the whole cycle of how the money comes in and goes out. And then thinking about, post-COVID, I know they lost some big cash generators they had in the past. I know they're rebidding the driver's ed and thinking about what might replace some of the other things. I've heard a lot of ideas suggested and I guess I would say I'm still in the learning phase, but I feel like they need to have some big camps is some big driver, but they need a few big cash cows in order to really fill the gap.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And just my 2 cents, obviously, Newton community education is something we hear about from residents as being really important regularly. I have a lot of confidence in the executive director, Kate Carpenter, and have been in touch with her on ways that we can use our networks as city councilors to expand outreach efforts, expand awareness. So to the extent that we can be a resource, feel free to reach out as you dig deeper into the opportunity, which I definitely will approve this nomination for.
Thank you, Councilor Mickley. Let me just mention that we've been joined by our final member of our committee, Councilor John Oliver from Ward 1. my esteemed colleague from Ward 1. Councillor Lobovitz. Councillor Lobovitz, there you go.
So I think we're very, very fortunate to have you, assuming this is approved, and I will fully support it. And very thankful for your commitment to this this endeavor. It sounds like they could really, the whole community could really use your expertise and your wisdom. So I look forward to your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lobovitz.
When the time comes, I'd like to move approval. Thank you.
Fair enough. Councillor Malachy?
Yeah, same here. I think I sort of started delving into the situation with Newton Community Ed and watched those same school committee meetings you did. So I think it's great that we have somebody with your background who's also experienced Newton Community Ed as a customer as an addition to the board. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Malachy. Councillor Baker? You're on
Unmute.
mute, sir.
Thank you. Because the candidate is from Ward 7, I'd be glad to move her, but my colleague has already made that motion, so I'll yield to him.
Fair enough. Councillor Oliver?
Great, thank you, Chair. I know I'm late. I will keep this brief. I apologize for my tardiness, but I have already been working with this candidate. Claire and I have been trying to provide Kate with as much support as we can in terms of creating and documenting, for lack of a better term, perhaps it's going to take the form of a business plan / turnaround plan to address a lot of the questions that are coming out of NPS and the school committee. I could not support this nomination more wholeheartedly. It seems like that is the will of the committee already. I'm going to put my hand down, and then I will be able to voice my support here in just a couple of ticks. But thank you all. I appreciate it. And thank you, Claire, for not only the help you've provided so far, but everything that I'm sure you're going to be able to do for NCE moving forward.
Thank you.
All right, well, Councillor Lobovitz has moved approval. We'll see how this goes. I don't know. I don't want to leave anyone in suspense for too long. And I don't want any of my committee members to get too contentious. Let's just take the votes. Let's be civil about this. Okay. Councillor Lobovitz has moved approval. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It is unanimous. Ms. Wadlington, congratulations. This will go to the full city council again in about a week and a half, where we expect the full city council to approve it. Good luck. Good luck with
Thank
the
you.
budget troubles. Good luck with the business plan. I hear great things about you. People have a lot of confidence in you. So hope you can help sort of turn the organization around and get them where they need to be. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Our final item of the evening is item 55-24. This is Her Honor the Mayor requesting to provide an update to the Programs and Services Committee regarding the City Seal redesign. Hattie Kerwin-Derrick usually leads this. She'll take us through a discussion. I think you actually have a presentation tonight. Councilor Humphrey, is there anything you want to say about it, or do you want to wait until after the presentation? Okay.
I'll wait until after.
Okay.
Or also remember, Councilor Malachy is also.
I was going to say that
now.
So anyone who's we have two counselors, Councilor Malachy and Councilor Humphrey, who were part of it, and anyone else who's not part of your committee was on the City Seal Committee. So, and we have one more member who had a prior engagement that'll be joining us shortly. So,
Councilor Malachy, I apologize. I didn't realize that you were working on the committee. And I would have also, and I will also turn to you when the time is right. So, Hattie, go ahead.
all right. So, this is the City Seal team. We've been working together a year and a half, almost 2 years. It's been really collaborative. And when I say the committee has made decisions, we really have worked lockstep and worked nicely together. So on the committees, Lisa Daddy, Bill Humphrey, myself, Councillor Maliki, Jim Murphy, who will be joining us, Ryan Shuby, and then Sebastian, our designer, is here as well. So this is the most common version of the current city seal. It's actually the seal that's in the center of the floor and the rotunda of City Hall. As we started our work, we found there are probably about 5 different versions of the city seal, with this as kind of the central theme and then taken off. This is, and you can see changes over time to the seal. The middle version is what currently, and then we have the 2-in ones that have morphed out of that initial one. There's consensus around the need for a clean, replicable, updated, standardized city seal. The timeline, we started in 2020. Mayor Fuller created the Ad Hoc City Seal Working Group. In November, the community provided input into that process. In 2022, the group did a full final report recommending that the city seal be updated. And then the mayor requested from the city council to approve the process of updating the seal, which was came to this committee an 8-0 approval. Then the whole city council approved 21-3 with going forward. In 2023, we released the update, the RFP, and then Sebastian was offered it in December of 2023. A week before the holidays. It was a hectic time. In January, we started working with Sebastian and getting community input. February 21st, 2024, we came back to this committee with an update. And that is, you have a packet that is new information that I had forgot to put in the initial draft. March 28th, 2024, we did a community meeting in Drucker soliciting community feedback. We did have some participants attend. On Friday, June 14th through Tuesday, August 21st, we had a survey for feedback for the designs, our draft designs. And then June 18th, 2024, we had presented those final designs in the War Memorial. And then in July, we came back to update again on our progress. The initial ad hoc committee had some basic recommendations about keeping the circular shape, changing the center portion, figuring out there were initially 3 dates. So trying to figure out which one date to go with. Deciding whether to retain or omit the words liberty and union to make it simpler, to try to encompass the 13 villages, environment, and any other some themes. So these are the initial 3 draft designs that we presented to the community. They're not labeled here, but you might know them as A, B, and C. And from that, we this was the most voted on version out of that, and we had over 800 responses to our survey, and then we took that feedback and as a group came to again, so on the left is our previous seals, the posted voted one, and this is the final version that we came up with. Taking into account people wanted some natural elements. So we did retain the tree. We flipped it to the other side than was initially presented and keeping with the current seal. If you walked across the pond that's in front of City Hall, you would have this view with a little creative license, I will say. But this is a view that is out there. On the lower part of the seal is the water. You can see that we stuck with the one date of 1688. We went with the full Massachusetts. That was feedback in our initial designs. We had just MA, a couple of different versions of MA, and the consensus was Massachusetts spelled out. We have kept the 13 villages, and we kept Liberty and Union. Oh, we're going to stay on this one for a little bit. Sebastian, you want to say anything?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and the ability to talk. So Hattie has mostly covered all of this, but so some of the other features is the outer ring that we currently have is this really wonderful banner. This is unique in that it's still circular, so it will fit in the overall pantheon of other cities and towns in Massachusetts, giving you the overall circular feel, but it will be unique and different and will stand out, which is mostly what you're looking for, but not stand out in a bad way. You'll notice at the top, there is some really interesting typography for City of Newton. This is specifically pulled from the original, one of the original designs for the original crest. Excuse me, seal. We wanted to, this was actually brought up by one of the members of the committee, that it was a nice touch in order to add, again, another transition point along with the tree in order to make it so that we're pulling in as many elements as we can from the original seal and adding some level of continuity. So those details are details that are found on that initial design, but updated for clarity and things like that. So overall, this will work at a smaller size, which honestly, the current seal does not work quite as well. There's much less detail overall, and this will work on a variety of different materials and things like that. So from patches to silk screening, things like that. And then I saw that there was a hand up.
Councilor Baker has raised his hand. Are you taking questions while you go through this? I think that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Yes, I think. Go ahead.
Okay, Councilor Baker.
Well, I can wait. I just have a comment and a suggestion. I don't know what the process is going forward, but the one issue that I'm concerned about is that I think the old seal, leaving aside the center portion, had to me a much more official look than this does. And if there were a design element that I could add that would make me feel comfortable in supporting it, would be to put a small thin ring around the image in the center so that it's a double ring that picks up the same feature of the old seal. This one doesn't yet look official to me in the same way that the old one does. And I think that's really important in signaling to the public the nature of a truck or a person who's wearing the seal in this context. It's not the same as a logo for a business. And I really think that's a distinction that ought to be maintained.
Thank you for that feedback.
And I don't know if we are going to vote on this at some point, but I think that's that would be an important element for me to support the design.
Understood. Thank you, Councilor Baker. Were you, Hattie, were you looking for a vote tonight from the committee?
Ideally, if we're in a place that we can, because it's January. I know there are a lot of feelings about the city seal. I think ideally we'd like to have it done sooner rather than later.
Mhm.
We're done. And I will be blunt. We are contractually, Sebastian has submitted this. We are contractually done. He is able to do some tweaks here and there, but we have fulfilled our contract with him.
Okay.
So.
I'm not going to leave you high and dry, though.
Right. No.
Let's see where the committee members are at. Yeah. Okay. Let me. Councilor Baker, you're all set for the moment?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Labovitz? You're on mute, Councilor Labovitz.
Following up on Councilor Baker's remark, could we look at the previous or the existing seal to look at that ring effect?
Is that what you wanted?
Yes. Thank you.
So what he would like is to have just around the outside edges of
of the
To
image.
kind of, instead of it bleeding out into clear, to kind of define it.
Yeah, would that be difficult given the ribbon-like nature of the seal, especially, with the city of Newton sticking out like that? Did we have a comment from Sebastian on that question?
Yes, certainly it is possible. It will add more visual elements to the overall look. And so when the committee looked at the overall design, obviously there's several things going on, as many city seals have a lot going on, but we were trying to minimize the overall look in order to simplify it. It would just add another element. But it's not overly complex in terms of adding it on my end.
Okay, so and my second question is how trying to simplify the image of the bushes in front of the city hall. Is that necessary? Because it would just be cleaner without, I know looking at it from across the water, that's the way it sort of looks like, but I don't know if that's essential. And if we're trying to make it a little simpler and cleaner, maybe we really don't need those bushes. I'm not saying I would vote against it, the bushes, but
We wanted some more. I think we wanted. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to point that out. That's all, and
Yeah.
consider it. That's all.
I think we wanted some more natural elements rather than just the tree to really listen to the feedback that was given overall. And having one tree, yes, it's one natural element, but having that one tree doesn't lend itself. But other Councilor, are you calling people, Councilor Krinsman, or?
Yeah, I didn't know you were done with your response, but I got it. Councilor Mickley, I think you're up. And Councilor Malachy. Councilor Mickley? Councilor Mickley just disappear from my
Yeah.
screen.
No, I'm here. Sorry, I wasn't muted.
Okay.
Hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an improvement from the last three versions. So definitely think it's headed in the right direction. Like the tree as sort of a nod to the tree in the original seal, the nature, the pond, City Hall. I do agree with Councilor Baker that some closing of that loop would make it look more official. I'm not sure the best way to do that. I'm just imagining different possibilities. One is just to connect the lines at the bottom, between Liberty and Union and 13 Villages around the 1688. Another could be to sort of draw lines around the image in a more clear way. Yeah, I don't know what's the best way to do that. Obviously, you're the expert, Sebastian, but something that brings a little closure to the loop, I think, would make it look more official. I guess the big question I have is, I imagine one of the, biggest oppositions we might hear in response to this version is the removing of the word nonantum, and just wondering how we're wrestling with that decision.
Patty, I know you've spoken about that in other meetings, but do you want to mention why the committee?
Yep. So we took it, from the beginning, the initial report in 2022 had talked about removal of it because it was not the initial, the nonantum that we know today is not the nonantum that was referred to on the city seal. So we did remove it. It was removed from the three versions that we surveyed. There were some people who, wanted to retain it, but the majority of people did not reference that. They referenced more the nature and other elements that we have had added. Lisa, do you want to speak to that?
So I think the way you framed the question, Counselor, is how do we address that? And you're right, it's come up. I remember it came up when we presented at the War Memorial. I remember when we presented at the library, and it's something that I've been thinking about for, I can't believe it's this many years. I think what finally spoke to people is that I mean, the working group identified the fact that it's really confusing when we now have a village named Nonantum to have the word Nonantum, and they're not the same thing. In fact, the current Nonantum village wasn't known as Nonantum until nearly the 20th century. It started in the late 1800s. It was called North Village before that. What I think spoke to people when we talked about this was, you know, if you're Auburndale or you're Thompsonville or you're Newton Center, why not have your name on there? I think where people really heard it was like, oh, why would we have one village name on there? If that's because that's the reason why some people wanted it, is they're very fond of the village of Nonantum, and I totally get that. But then what about the other 12 villages? So when we talked about having 13 villages represented on the seal, that's where people thought, that's what's most important to me. I really identify with the concept of Newton being 13 villages, and I that's how we addressed it, and that's what seemed to really speak to people in the past.
Okay, yeah, thanks for sharing that. That background's really helpful, and I think in any sort of final presentation of the seal, I think sort of an accompanying commentary on the various decision making and thought process that goes into, I think, would be helpful. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good things in this, so appreciate all the hard work that all of you are doing to push this forward.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, Councilor Meckley.
Before we go on, so, you know, I think everyone knows that I was meeting with city councilors to talk about the versions all along the way, just to keep everyone abreast, to get feedback so I could hear, took it back to the committee. So we did have a version of what Councilor Baker is requesting.
Oh,
So Sebastian is going to actually share that.
that's great. I was
happy.
going to ask if you had one.
Yeah, I'm
And
happy
it's
to
a
share.
draft, so I'm going to do a caveat. It is a very rough draft. So don't, you know, well, on that one I saw, but so it's a very, it's not a final version. Okay.
Yeah, and so you'll see the rings, but there'll be much more detail in the buildings and things like that. And so in user testing it, we've removed some of those details in order to make it work at a smaller scale. So just be aware it will, and it's not digitized quite in the same way. So just
All right. So I'll stop sharing so you can take over.
Certainly.
And I'd like to acknowledge that our final member, Jim Murphy, has joined us. Thank you, Jim, for being here.
So you can see here, we have the previous city seals. This is the posted and voted. And so some of you have seen this. This is the 4 different versions. So you'll see the 2 bottom ones connect the lower seal. It does remove the more unique banner element that we have here. And then this is probably the closest to what the first Councilor
Baker.
Thank you. Councilor Baker spoke of adding a ring around the inside, but certainly you could do something like this as well, where it's closed off. I would say that this is not currently within scope, but we could figure this out. This is a pretty simple addition of adding that from a time standpoint from me, for what it's worth.
Councilor Baker, can I just ask you, does number 2 there, is that along the lines of what you were envisioning?
Yes, that's right. That adds an element, I think, that's important to make this more official looking. And I think it also will help just in the printing process to provide an edge to bleeding, especially in fabric and things like that. The bottom one, I'd actually prefer over the banner because I think, again, a seal has an element of a continuous ring, but I'm not going to make that the issue that I decided on. I could do it with either 2 or 4 with the current iteration of the interior. So.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councilor Malachy?
Okay, well, we just covered one of the points I wanted to make, that we did have that as one of the sort of A or B options, to have that inner outline or not, to define the scene. So just if I didn't, you know, get officially added or added at all to the working group until I guess it was September, although I did go to the June last summer meeting at City Hall and offered comments on there. I do think the current design is a lot better than the 3 choices that people were given to vote on.
We should put that one back up on the screen while you're talking.
The three choices one?
No, I'm saying the current.
Oh, the
just-
current one, yeah, that's simple, just C1, yeah,
Hattie, I'll let you take over.
okay. Yeah, I found, I guess I found that whole survey not real conclusive, because so many people seemed not crazy about any, and the people's preferences seem to depend on one element of the design when a whole lot of things were changing from A to B to C. It seemed like a lot of people, liked the tree but didn't like the 13 sides, so they liked the ribbon version better. I personally found the two buildings very sterile, and I think a lot of people did without the nature, so that it's good we got some nature in. The tree was, I liked the tree, but why was it next to a dirt road? And then it turned out the dirt road was a river. And then there's like different combinations of words in each one, and some people like one set of words and some people liked another set of words. So I think where we ended, if we can go back to the proposed one. Yeah, so I think or maybe that one next to the other, whatever. So I think we ended up with an improved central image. It's I would have liked some fauna as well as flora, I guess, like some ducks or a bird or something to give it like a living, breathing thing in it. But I think it's great that we've got Massachusetts spelled out, which was, I believe, not in the old seal at all. So you didn't know if we were Newton, Massachusetts, Newton, Iowa, Newton, Kansas, whatever. I like the 13 villages. One of the Liberty and Union, that was not something I was, dying to necessarily keep. One of the other things we discussed in the later stages was what words to have, and one of the we were kind of between keeping Liberty and Union as a sort of homage to the old seal, or another option was using Quinnipiquin, which was the Algonquian word for the Charles River, because we're not actually getting the Charles River in there. I think it's great that we added water, because it recognizes that there is water near City Hall, and we've got a lot of water in the city. But with the Charles River being one of the defining features of Newton, that it's kind of unique that we're basically a peninsula surrounded on three sides by the river. I thought it would have been nice to have Quinnipiquin in there, and to also be still having a Native American word. So those are the kind of choices we were making as we narrowed things down. I think the idea of having the tree in the same position as the old seal is great. My thing now is I want to make sure that we get public feedback on this, certainly before I want to vote. I don't know how other councilors feel, but I don't want to vote on this before we've gotten the kind of public feedback that we got on the first rounds, and get a sense of, do people, one, do they care? If they care, do they think this is good enough? Because I think I'd like to sort of get it right, and we don't want to have to be changing the seals every 20 years or something. We'd like a seal that will sort of stand the test of time and still be kind of portray Newton in a way that some other city seals kind of represent their city, some better than others. Some are overly crowded, like I think Boston is pretty crazy, but a lot of cities have a building, and like, do we have the right building? I'm not sure. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Farrell.
Thank you very much. My compliments to the committee. I think you really have moved this forward. I've had several conversations with Hattie, and I'm impressed with what you've done here. I think Councilor Baker's notion of closing that link or putting a circle in would be helpful. And this may come if this is ever done in color, but I don't see the river as a river. It looks to me
No.
like a field with a path through it. And I don't know if there's any way you can give any more slight curvature to some of those lines and maybe even connect some of the lines to give it. So it doesn't look like a path going through a field, but Sebastian, this is
Yeah,
hard.
certainly. So part of the larger issue is that the water is often very still and doesn't have a lot of chop to it. With that said, yes, potentially we could add curvature to the line. It is a relatively neat area. The reason, that exists, the breaks in the water actually exist because it's a pretty common tool or way to go about showing water in etching, where you're showing the light break across the water in that way. If you have solid lines going across, it will actually probably feel more like a field in that regard. But I understand what you're saying about the path. We can certainly potentially add bend in it so that it zigzags left and right a little bit more. There is a color version. But what we often find is, or I often find in both seals and logos and anything else with design, color is so subjective, and people will often only focus on the color rather than the design. So we do have a design with color to show you, but we wanted to get through the larger conversation of the seal itself first before we got there.
Thank you. I mean, I think there are smaller breaks in the water part, which I like. I just think that, with all due respect, I think that path, that white reflective area is a little too big, maybe, or anyhow, a slight bend to show that it's more water than road or path field would be, I think, would be helpful. But again, I think you've done a wonderful job, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Crowley. Councilor Mickley, are you going to raise the parting of the Red Sea here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just on the circular lines. There, nice one. Yeah, so actually seeing the other options was really helpful, Sebastian. I feel pretty strongly that number 4 is better than number 2, and number 2 is better than what we're seeing right here, right? And looking at sort of the circular loops. And the reason why I like number 4 is both it looks more official and it looks more like the original seal, and I think does a better job of nodding to that original double loop structure. So I wanted to see if we could just do a straw vote here between those various options to see that if we are going to propose something for public feedback or for sort of next iteration discussions, at least we do something that we have the most confidence in. Maybe others disagree, maybe they agree, but I think there's actually a big difference between 4 and what we're seeing here.
Let me just, not that anyone's more important than anyone else, but Councilor Baker, you like number 4 as well as number 2, is that correct?
That's correct. And if I had to choose, I'd choose 4 over 2, but
Okay.
That's for the same reason that Councilor Mickley just said. It looks more official, and I think it's really important that we make a statement that this is not a corporate image. This is a public body, and I think that gives the impression, or put it another way, a stamp. It looks like a stamp, not a logo, and I think that's the real difference. The seal was designed to express authority, and that's why I like number 4 better than 2.
Thank you. Councilor Leibovitz, your hand was up, and then I thought I saw Councilor Humphrey's hand. Councilor Humphrey, I'm going to come to you next, regardless, okay? Councilor Leibovitz.
Just a clarifying point, was the committee recommending the seal that you showed? Is that a
That was what I was going to comment
Go ahead,
on.
Councilor Humphrey.
So the working group was not putting forward multiple options here. We really did discuss in great depth all of the different possibilities, rings, closing off the ribbon, various other things. We had very thorough conversations about the pros and cons. A lot of this also has to do with what medium things are being viewed in. We haven't even we haven't done a deep dive on the color version yet. In this meeting, but we have had a lot of discussions about the color in the working group. I think it was unanimous what we came to you with, and that we felt that that was the strongest option. We definitely, heard the feedback and considered it and looked at it. That's why we have some rough sketch alts here, but
Could someone?
I don't
Sorry.
know. I don't necessarily like there were a lot of discussions there about, graphic design and graphic design principles and things like that, not only with our designer, but also we've got a member of the working group who's graphic designer as well. And then, I'm in a graphic design certificate program right now. And, so we had a lot of thoughts and discussions about it. I think we also need to remember that this committee is not the entirety of the city council as well. So if we start tinkering here in this committee and doing straw votes on little elements and things, I'm a little worried about where that goes. As we said, there are little tweaks that Sebastian can do here and there within, our existing contract, but the major work is done, we felt, and contractually is done. So I'm just cautioning us to not get too carried away here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Could I just ask one other question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Why in particular did the committee not want this inner ring and the 16, is it 8, whatever, 80, whatever, sort of in that open pattern rather than enclosed? Can you comment on that? Or somebody?
Bill or Hattie, does one of you want to speak to that?
Do you want to talk about it?
I think, you're the leader on the working group, so you can summarize the.
Hattie?
Thanks. I think it was just personal preference, but I think I agree with everything Councillor Humphrey said. I also think that the majority of us would also agree that any one of these is better than what we currently have. So, in the spirit of compromise, I think I at least would be willing to consider. At the time, I think we all liked the open because it lets your mind wander. It's not so defining, not so constraining. But if it comes down to 4 over nothing, personally, I feel pretty strongly that we need a new city seal. I feel pretty strongly that if it's going to come down to some tweaks, that I'd rather tweak and say, please, 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 Sebastian, I'll bake you cookies once a week or whatever. To make it happen, I will do that. I haven't talked to my colleagues about this, but I would think the other members of our team would probably feel the same way. And I think that, I'm going to out Councillor Oliver, but when I went over this with him, he's like, I think he liked 2, but he's like, if you told me I liked 4, I would say, it could have been 4. All of them are kind of the same. They had just different elements so that we could see it in a different way. Lisa, did you want to talk to it?
No, I think that's really helpful.
Okay.
I think we all get it. What I want to say is we created a working group and you guys have done excellent work. I don't think there's anyone on this committee who's going to say you haven't done excellent work, moved this along, gotten it to a place where I think all of us are really comfortable moving forward in this endeavor, that we're really close to the final product. But just to be fair, what we said all along was that it's coming back to the council, and that the council will have an opportunity to weigh in, and that councilors will have an opportunity to weigh in. So I do think it is fair, even at this point, for councilors to weigh in. I think as far as the city council process goes, the city council really does rely on the committee to do the work. We hear that time and time again at our full city council meetings. Committee work should be done in committee. Other councilors are certainly welcome to come to this committee and participate in that discussion. But I think this is the right forum for us to have this discussion. I think we're really down to it. I'll make my recommendation later. We'll see where it goes. But let me come back to Councillor Malachy and Councillor.
To clarify,
go ahead.
to clarify, so, I'm not suggesting we can't make any changes. I'm just cautioning that we be very careful and advised about that in this process, because any of these type of things are on some level subjective. And if we start having 24 people weighing in with their personal graphical preferences when they would basically be fine with what's there, I think that's the part that I'm concerned about. So, if it's the will of the committee saying like, yes, we all love the concept in 4 and, keep the image you have in the center, as proposed, but just make those minor tweaks, and that's all that we're looking for, then sure, by all means. I just, if it starts getting to the level of, what does the glint on the water look like and the bushes in front and that kind of thing, then I'd start getting a little bit more concerned there.
Fair, thank you. Councilor Maliki, Councilor Baker, I think your hand is still up, which is fine, but let me come to Councilor Maliki first.
Oh, yeah, it's to comment on the ring and the opening or no opening thing. I can't even remember. I was basically on the fence whether to have the inner outline or not. At first look, I liked it that way, and then it's like, oh, then maybe it's better the other way. So, that was something I could have gone either way on. I think, with the opening around 1688, I think my thought here is that if you're going to have a ribbon, have it look like a ribbon. If you are closing in to the ribbon, you've got some kind of Mobius, something like that. And it, to me, I think it's good the way it sort of emphasizes the important date. It stands out more and sort of getting lost in all the text. So, again, if there was a strong preference the other way, I wouldn't be terribly upset. But I think the opening is okay myself.
Thank you. I'll just make one comment, which is I really like where this has come. I like all the options before us. I agree with folks who have said that any of the ones that are before us, or the recommendation plus 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all better than the current city seal. I think the work that the committee has done is thoughtful, is done well, and I really like the options before us. Councillor Farrell, I don't know if you noticed this, but I think when it's in the circle, I actually think it actually improves the look of the water as well. Perhaps not intentionally, but I think it looks better and more like water than it does.
Just remember, this is not the exact same water that's in the final proposal, because we made changes to the center image.
And I think the angle, I think of it as a reflection of the light onto the water, and the angle changed a little bit from this penultimate version to the final proposal one.
It's a little bit hard to tell, but I agree with you, Councillor Kritzman, that I think the either 3 or 4, and I keep squinting to see them, but they look more water-like.
Yeah. If someone is a linguistic expert and has the word in English that means water-like, I would love to know that word. Councillor Labovitz.
So one thought is to hold the item and have the committee go back with the comments that have been made and come back with a final recommendation to the group, and sort of have a short discussion and explanation as to why in the end they decided what they're recommending. I'm just putting that out there as a possibility. I'm reluctant to vote on something that the committee has not, it sounds like the committee would consider the comments that were made. And if that's the case, if it's not, that's different. But if that's the case, then give them, one more, perhaps just one more meeting to think about the comments that were made, and then come back with a final recommendation. I don't feel comfortable tweaking this after all the work that the committee has done. I'm ready to vote in support of the current recommendation, but I understand the comments that have been made and the recommendation. So that's the way I'm thinking about this, and I wondered what people would think about that.
I think it's a fair question, Councilor Lebovitz, and if I would say it would be more powerful when going to the full council to say that both the working group and the Programs and Services Committee hopefully unanimously recommended the option before us. So I think what you're saying is, and maybe this is a question for Hattie / Councilors Humphrey and Maliki, or any other members of the committee, but if the committee had another meeting and undertook sort of the feedback from Programs and Services today, do you think that you could all get to a unanimous recommendation, perhaps along the lines of number 4?
I think so. I think that we worked well together, and I think we could. My only ask is, can we go back and talk color so that at the same time we can be efficient with our time? And
Yes, I
have
was
the
going to make that exact recommendation.
Okay.
Let me just say one thing.
Yeah, Lisa.
My observation is what you're telling us to do now, we actually did our last meeting and the meeting before that. We poured over these 4 designs and we brought one to you as our recommendation. So we kind of already did what's suggested that we do. I feel like if we go back, we're just going to vote the same way because we already voted on those 4 designs. So I'm not sure how that helps move the ball forward. I'm wondering what we do to move it from the committee to the council, and that you're the experts on how that would be successful. But I think going backward, Hattie has expressed that we have time and money limitations. And I'm just going to say this, Natick, actually, many of you know Natick had the same issue with the center of their seal. They started after us and finished before us with their new seal. So I'm putting that out there as a challenge to keep us moving forward.
So what I'm hearing is that Natick really just did a rush job and didn't get it right, and that's too bad. But that's not
As the designer for Natick, I would not say that. I would not say that.
I'm just kidding.
Especially on a recorded meeting. Thank you.
I'm purely kidding. It is helpful feedback, and I appreciate it. And I think, Lisa, I think the point is, having had the Programs and Services Committee, which is the committee that's supposed to vote on this, get the specific feedback from them as opposed to just councilors at large or members of the public. But maybe it doesn't change anything, and that's certainly for the committee members or the working group to decide. Councilor Mickley.
Yeah, so thanks. First, definitely okay with taking a slow and methodical approach as long as it leads to a better outcome, right? So all good. Second, on the feedback, well, I think to me, if we all agree that 4 is better than 1, then I think that is feedback worth advancing and doing something with. If we don't all agree that, then that's another story. But my personal view is 4 is better than 3, 3 is better than 2, and 2 is better than 1. So I do think that since we have to make a recommendation to the full council, if we all feel that 4 is the best option, then we should ask the committee to make adjustments based on that recommendation. But again, that's just my view. So that probably has some value.
Councilor Baker.
Let's see. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yep.
The gadget is always a challenge with me. I agree with Councilor Mickley. I think asking the committee, I'd like to go to the color and get some feedback, but I think if we gave, because I respect the fact that the committee came to its recommendation, but I think if we're in favor of a version of 4, that we ask that the designer and come back to the committee with that thought in mind. I don't think putting it back to the full working group is probably a good use of time, given what we've just heard. But I do think that the designer and Ms. Derrick could certainly take the feedback and bring it back to us. And maybe we take a little time on the color piece too, and then see what the next iteration looks like.
And I think Sebastian will agree that we're fine with that. Our charge was to hand you something in your charge, and then you need to take it. So you've given us feedback. So I feel like we need to honor that, hear it, and look at number 4. So, but I would like to, at the same time, talk color, if you don't mind, and you have some more time.
Yeah, Councilor Lebovitz, and then can we go on to color?
Sure. I was just going to say that it would be helpful to see, I guess this is what, 2 and 4 in color. if that's possible, because that might make a difference as well.
Okay, so let's go on to color. Hattie.
So one of the things that when we went into this, I had requested was we have 2 high schools. They have distinct colors of orange and blue. So that was the one thing that we wanted to keep with this and kind of challenge Sebastian with. Could he incorporate those colors? And you can see that he did, which I think, and I personally like it. And I think everyone was fine. We did what initially we changed the brick color a little bit. I think on this, when you see it in color, you can kind of see the bins of the water, which I know was a question. Thoughts?
Counselors, do you have thoughts? And although my just initial thought, I will say, Hattie, there are so many instances in which the seal appears in black and white.
Yep,
but I do think it's fair to have that discussion and not. I like the way you guys presented and the fact that we had that discussion. I think what I'm
Yeah, and most often it is in black and white. But there are instances where we use color. Our badge, so I didn't go into we're not going to spend thousands and millions of dollars changing everything right away. As badges, cars transfer over, then we would change the seal on our cars and the patches for employees. It is in color.
Comments on color. Counselor Lopovitz, your hand is still up, or okay.
Yeah, is it possible to see number 4 in color, or you didn't?
It is not, because the reason we had the black and white, sorry to just jump in, but the reason we had the black and white version, because we had that as an option to choose. Since we chose as a group number 2, we didn't colorize number 4.
I still think it might be helpful to see both in color, that's all.
Okay. Thanks, Councilor Lopovitz. Councilor Mickley.
Yeah, overall, really like the colors: sunset, the blue, the green. The one color that I just wonder about is the red. It just, I don't know, it looks a little barn-like red and not like the red brick that City Hall is actually made out of. So that's just the one color that I think maybe could be improved, but I like the other colors.
Thank you.
All right. I am feverishly working on creating something so that you can see both of them side by side. Please bear with me. And just to answer the question about the red. So originally the actual brick, when you eyedrop it, is very, very dark and is a little bit closer to a black than a red. So in order to have enough contrast between the black lines of both the windows and the outer building, we lowered the red to be more of the color that you have here, but I hear your point.
Councilor Humphrey, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to note, we actually had a specific discussion in one of the meetings about what color red to use for the brick. And I think a lot of us were surprised that what we thought in our heads was the red of the building was actually not as this was in reality closer to the red of the building than what we might have, which, you can always make a subjective call that it needs to look more like how you're imagining it or something, even if it's not exactly like what it is. But it is quite dark. And this particular version of the center image is based somewhat on a photo that I believe Councilor Malachy actually took. And then, there were some other supplemental photos as well to help with that, but just kind of getting the angle and the concept was from one of those photos. And it is sort of this more of this red, despite the fact that, yeah, in some ways it looks a little barn-like. But we did look at like a couple different, tints and things like that. And I think this seemed like particularly suitable, especially because we're having to think about, in what context is it actually going to appear in color and what materials is it going to be made of and things like that.
It's interesting because my reaction was similar to Councilor Mickley's. I thought the brick of the building is lighter, but
I'm just saying, like, if you pull up the Google Street View from it actually looks quite dark.
If you think that's dark, you should see what goes on inside the building. Just kidding, everyone. Sorry. Councilor Baker.
I have one question on color, which may bear on the choice between 2 and 4. I could see why setting on different color for the band around the rim when you use a ribbon. But if you're going to have a circle, I'm not sure I would want to see the print without as much contrast as possible. I think one of the advantages of the simple black and white or white and dark is the contrast. This is a little bit of a gray or brown. I can't quite tell what shade it's aiming for, but it is not a you know, this makes it look more ribbon-like as opposed to ring-like, and I think that's something to think about.
So it is meant to be kind of like the color of an older paper, something that, you know, something that harkens to a different time period when both cloth and paper had a slight tint to it.
Like 1688. Just to pick a random here. Okay. But Councilor Baker, you do still like the distinction of the color between the rim around the picture and the ribbon, for what it's worth.
I'm not so sure. That's why if
Gotcha.
before I'd like to see both versions if I had a choice to do that. Yeah, that's all. That's the only
Sebastian
color.
is furiously at work with something. I don't know if he's going to come up with something, but we should all understand that if something comes up within the next few minutes, it's very rough. It was put together quickly. It wasn't put together hastily, but we should be forgiving and we should be understanding that it is not a final product. It was not vetted by everybody. It was not, he didn't have time to perfect it the way he normally would some of these other things. Is this explanatory filibuster going well?
Well, I think it's just raising the number of cookies that Ms. Varick is going to bake, I think.
Is he on an hourly rate for this meeting, or is this meeting like one thing? Like, can we just, you know, not adjourn the meeting?
It's all one thing. And I think Hattie and I have just discussed a way to potentially work this out. So, so that we can move into this without anybody worrying too much about it.
Okay.
Okay. Are there other comments while Sebastian's finalizing his, I'm sure, wonderful work?
Well, I guess now is a good time to ask if there's anybody on the committee who has very strong objections to the color scheme overall. We should absolutely hear that right now, because we don't want to be taken by surprise in the next discussion.
No, I like the color theme. I like that both orange and black and blue from the high schools, like you said, Hattie, is incorporated to the whole thing. As a Newton South graduate, I think orange and blue should be elevated above the orange and black, but I'm not gonna
invert sky.
Yeah. I think the colors look great, actually. It's interesting to me what Councilor Humphrey said about the actual color of the building. So I was interested to learn that. I think the color scheme is good. I do think obviously the water looks more water-like when it's in blue. I don't know if it's the design features or the color, but I do think number 2 and number 4 looked more water-like. To the point that Councilor Farrell was making. So I don't know if incorporating that design is wise or if it's the outer rim or what it was, but you know, we certainly want it to look like water, and I trust designers more than I trust myself to make it look like water, so that makes sense. I'm not seeing any objections to the color scheme from any members of the committee. Is that accurate? Maybe I could just get a nod, and then committee members are comfortable with that. And if the color scheme presented to us is the same color scheme, and maybe the working group can look at a couple of different designs. Are there any of the members of the working group who are here? Thank you all for being here. Do you have any strong objections to going back and potentially entertaining the notion of, for example, number 4, something with the circle, as Councilor Baker would call it, the more official looking city seal design?
Okay, don't make me call on you, everyone. Ryan, Shuby, Jim.
I think I want to add that when we looked at all the 4 options, we were all okay with all of them. We loved them all, and it was not an easy decision to pick one out of the 4. So I would be okay with any one of those.
That's how I feel about my kids most nights. Makes sense. Thank you, Shuby. Anyone else want? I mean,
Yep.
let
Jim
me
Murphy.
just say, I'm taking silence as sort of affirmation that what's on your mind has been said.
Jim's got
Jim,
his
do you
hand
want to
up.
speak?
Sorry,
Yeah,
Jim.
I was just going to say that, but that, you know, we did talk a little bit about it, and so, you know, the recommendation was the result of that conversation. That said, when we get down to those last four, I think there was pretty general agreement that, you know, as far as the broad design pieces, that they were all, you know, definitely worth considering.
Great.
I
Thank you.
wasn't
Glad
clear
to
if
hear
we're
that.
gonna see a color version of number 4.
He's working on it.
Is that what he's working on? Okay.
Yeah. And that's why we're kind of filibustering and trying to, you know, give him a little more time to work his magic.
Great.
Maybe we could have some musical interlude here. Anybody got?
I can fill the air just a little bit. I was trying to do this separately in the chat to my working group fellows. I'm just going to put it out there in public. I wonder, given what Shuby and Jim affirmed, I think we all felt pretty good about all 4 designs. If this city council committee came up with a singular version tonight that they would be happy to take to the city council, I'm not sure it would have to come back to us. I don't want to disempower us, but I know from our conversations that we were pretty happy with all 4. So I would put that out there as a possibility that if programs and services can settle on one, it's quite possible the working group would, if not right now, maybe through an email tomorrow, say, we're good. I'm just going to put that out there.
And remember all the things that Councilor Krinsman said.
Not all the things. Some of them were inappropriate and out of place.
Wow.
Just remember the things I said about the color in this. Okay.
I feel more comfortable with number 4 now that I see it in color, I have to say. So I certainly would support that.
So that's number 2 in the middle. Number 4 is on the right. Correct?
That is
Yes.
correct. So these are the 2 that we originally presented to you. This is what I, again, feverishly threw together. So we do have an outer ring for the image on the inside. You can see there's a black line. This would show up essentially here around, it would also show up in the black and white version in this particular version. And you can see that these 2 pieces are connected. We have dots in between the text in order to have delineation, even though we have enough space. But that's a pretty common trope to have some sort of element between. It's not really a big enough space to put anything else. I cannot stress that enough. A simple dot is probably the best way that you want to, that's my professional recommendation to you. But you get the idea. Obviously, things would be smoothed out and perfected, but yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Councilor Humphrey made the point that the water in number 4 was a little bit different. This looks like the water from the final design
Correct.
put into sort of number 4, right?
I essentially pulled the center of this and moved it over here and then connected all these things very, very hastily.
Okay. I mean, I feel like I'm playing highlights.
Yeah.
You remember those?
The
puzzles?
difference between 2 and 4, which this is what's on screen now on the right is 4. What's on screen in the middle is the color version of what we presented to you. It's not 2. Same with the one on the left, which is the black and white version. The difference between 2 and 4 was that 2 had the inner ring around the illustration, but did not close the ribbon at the bottom, whereas 4 does close the ribbon at the bottom and has the inner ring around the illustration. So there's also an alternative version would be one where the ribbon remains open at the bottom, but there is a ring around the illustration. That would be 2, but he showed us the color version of 4 rather than 2, just to be clear.
All right, let me just try and do this real quickly. Are there any members of the committee who object to having the closed ring at the bottom? They felt like that was the way people were headed. Does anyone feel strongly that it should not be closed at the bottom, that it should look more like the middle one?
I don't love it as much, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah, kind of same here, yeah.
Okay. Councilor Lovovitz and Baker, you're trying to make comments. You're not voting, right? With your hands?
As I said, I would support given the fact that the committee was okay with any of the 4, and listening to the comments and looking at the colorized version. You know, I would support it seems like the preference of at least a number of the people of number 4.
Okay, I'm going to come to Ryan. I'm going to come to you in 1 second. I just want to say that I think what I've heard tonight, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's sort of support for all of these, and there's more support, slightly more passionate support for number 4 or the one on the far right that we are looking at here. So if there's any that is starting to sort of, bubble up above the others, it's that one. But again, support for all the elements and support for all the different things. Ryan?
Yeah,
I have a
thanks.
question.
I just wanted to say that another thing that we talked about, and I think we came to an agreement on, is that in some of these I see there's an ampersand in Liberty and Union, and I know this is a small thing, but I don't know which we're all looking at. Right now, these have ampersands, and then in some of the other final versions, it's spelled out, and I think we kind of agreed that it should be spelled out.
Anyone feel strongly about the ampersand versus the 3-letter version?
I like to spell that.
Okay, that's one for spelled out.
I would prefer not to spell out because I think that just detracts from the 2 words that we want to really focus on.
All right, we're back to a tie.
But again,
I have a thought.
Councilor Baker.
I sort of like spelling out because we're talking about an idea that came from a long time ago, and I don't think we saw a lot of ampersands in the colonial documents. So I would use "and" just as a historical preference. I have one small design question that when we get to 4, they look like the little wrinkles up at the top where the bend occurs. And when you had the ribbon model, I can understand that, but I'm not sure you still need the little wrinkles under. But I don't feel strongly about it. But I did want to point out, it looks like 4, there is a small black ring around the color of the image, correct? Just to be clear in terms of the design.
Yes, there is.
Okay, that's I think.
And remember, he did this quickly, so
No,
it is
I
not.
understand.
Okay.
No, he's got at least several cookies coming before it's finished.
Yeah. I'll be in the kitchen for a while.
We certainly owe you some ice cream to go with it.
Yeah, right.
I'll take right of first refusal on your next design projects.
Councilor Maliki.
I just wanted to vote for ampersands as I did in the working group, because I just think ampersands are pretty.
Perfect. Then we're back to split. Great. Councilor Mickley.
I'm going to vote for fully spelling it out, mainly because that's how it's done in the original seal. And I think anytime we can reference that, that's great. And I also agree with Councilor Baker on the wrinkles. I think it's better without them. So I think Councilor Baker has a good eye for the small details that I actually think make a big difference.
Councilor Humphrey, how are we doing on not going through each design element? But okay. I see Baker, Mickley, and Lobovitz with your hands up. Are those remnants, or you guys want to weigh in again?
No, I'm a remnant, thanks.
All right, then let's just do this real quickly. Members of the committee, use your hands, okay?
I just wanted to second the idea of removing those wrinkles.
Okay, so the 2 things I want to do a quick vote of the committee on are ampersand versus and wrinkles versus no wrinkles. Okay, binary choices here. Members of the committee, raise your hand for one, not the other.
Can I make a comment on the wrinkles? Are you referring to the shadows?
The shading here is
right. Yeah. So those aren't supposed to be wrinkles. That's to give it depth. It's sort of a shadow effect.
It looks wrinkly.
I think you're talking.
Us old folks want to get rid of wrinkles anytime we can. You know that.
Right.
That was, I mean, at one point it had been sort of, Sebastian, I think, hadn't gotten around to putting them in yet, and they were put in on purpose. And I do think they're appropriate in a ribbon context.
So,
right,
Councilor Brinsman, are you voting now?
Yeah.
Right, so I gotta lower my hand again. Okay.
Okay. So, Councilor Lobovitz, can you lower your hand for a second? Okay. First, we're going to do ampersand versus and. Binary choice here. okay? You may either vote for ampersand or you may vote for and. Okay, counselors who prefer to spell out the word and, raise your hand. 3. Counselors who prefer the ampersand, raise your hand.
I'm trying to lower my hand. I can't.
Your hand is lowered.
Okay.
4, great. I'm intentionally not voting because I don't want any ties. So that is,
Well, the problem is I also didn't vote.
no, we had 4. We had 4-3,
I'm just saying I didn't.
right?
I did
How did we
not.
have 4-3?
Somebody switched their vote is what happened there.
I think you had 3-3 by accident.
Yeah.
Humphrey, which way do you feel?
Yeah, I didn't have a strong preference. I think there had been some discussion that spelling it out helps it balance a little bit better with the 13 villages visually. So I'm fine with it being and it's you know,
Okay.
it's an antebellum pre-Civil War but 19th century phrase. So you could go either way on it, but yeah.
Okay, sounds like the committee by a slight margin prefers to spell it out, and it sounded like the working group actually preferred to spell it out too. So I think that's
Okay, so spell out
we'll go that way,
and
spell out
Yep.
the word
Okay.
and thank you for raising that, Ryan.
wrinkles.
Other question. Do we want it to look like a ribbon on the outside, wrinkly, or do we want it to look smooth and not wrinkly? It's just a rounded circle. Okay.
Hatch etchings, we'll call them to be neutral.
Hatch etchings. That's the term.
Is there an image? Is there an image without the wrinkles?
Yes, that's what I was.
Yeah, back to the 2 and 4, right?
Now we're up to like, dozens and dozens of cookies. I might should not show up at work for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
I thought, Councilor Baker, I thought you were saying you wanted just a smooth circle, not the ribbon appearance.
No, I'm not. I would prefer a smooth circle, but I don't think we have that the easy to do that. I think the city of Newton is highlighted. I just take the little wrinkles out, and I think it looks fine.
Yep.
Okay. So we're now looking at far right versus the one just to the left of the far right. Okay. Counselors, show me your hands if you prefer the one on the left with the hash marks.
Should we look at wrinkles, no wrinkles in black and white, since that is where it will be most often seen?
I'm gonna just say I am trying to be accommodating, but I think that we're now at the point where I'm no longer going to be making changes on screen, and we're starting to get to a point where it's a little unreasonable.
Yeah.
Fair.
So I think if you can't draw context from what's here, I really don't know what to say at this point.
That's
I'm
fair.
sorry.
I
Not to
agree.
be rude.
So again, prefer the left with the hash marks. Counselors, raise your hand. 2 on the right with the no hash marks. 6 or 5.
Let me get mine down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
5-2. Okay. So the sense of the committee then is essentially this version on the far right. I guess I'd like to hear from anyone from the working group who has an objection to that. I don't remember if you guys are do you need to give notice of your meetings? Do you have public meetings, or can you just do your work?
We can just
Okay.
do our work.
Okay. So I'm going to take a vote of the committee. And if you want to take a vote of the working group, we can do that too. And it would be nice to be able to go to the full council saying that it was unanimous from both the working group and the committee, if we feel that way. I think the option we're looking at now is the one on the far right, both in black and white and in color. Councilor Farrell?
Just quickly, I like the one on the far right. If you can use the image that's in the original number 4, that in my opinion had a different water look. But I know
Okay,
you don't. I know.
Yeah, he just transferred it over to be fast about it, but I hear what you're saying. Yep.
I'm just saying, I like the one on the far right, but with the image that is in number 4. Thank you.
Yep, Councilor Baker?
I'm okay. I'm just we're having and in there. I just want to be clear. That's all.
Okay. So, Councilor Oliver?
Yeah, so you had mentioned earlier that, hopefully we'll get a unanimous vote on this. I'm going to be abstaining on this item. I need to go back and reread some of the materials that Miss Dady, I think I'm pronouncing that right, correct me if I'm wrong, had sent to me several months back. So my concerns are, I have no concerns with the designs of this, like the visuals all work for me. I don't want anyone to be put off by my abstention. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's not the design, it's not the, like, although I do completely agree with our graphic artist here that he's gone well above and beyond being accommodating here to the pixel fairy touches that we're doing here. But that's all.
Okay, so looking at the one on the far right, potentially with other water, but the one on the far right, can I get a vote of the committee? Are we comfortable approving this item, approving this design to send it to the full city council? Councilor Baker.
Go ahead.
I just want to indicate that if we're adding "and" in, and I assume the designer will have an opportunity just to check on how the relative spacing of the letters works around the rim as a result of that. There may be a modest adjustment, but the basic idea is the same. I don't want to preclude him from doing that, but
yeah, I think we
Yeah,
did
that should be
validate that it works. So
yes,
yeah.
Yep, and it's fair to point out that it is not exactly what we're looking at. It is the word spelled out because we didn't take that vote. So thank you for that correction. Okay, members of the council, members of the Programs and Services Committee. All those in favor of moving the image on the far right to the full council, can I get a show of hands in favor? Five. Any opposed?
Were you asking for the committee or the working group?
City
Programs and Services
councilors.
Committee.
Okay, so yeah, I'm in favor.
Good.
Okay, so were you the sixth one? All right, if you're in favor, raise your hand again. Programs and Services Committee.
Am I up or down? I can't tell.
You're down. Do you want to be up?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
So that is 6 in favor. Any opposed? And abstentions. Maliki and Oliver, are you abstaining?
Yeah, only because, their public has not had any chance to view this yet.
Okay, so it's 602 from the committee. Probably should have done it first, but just double checking. Members of the working group, I don't know if you want to take an actual vote.
So members of the working group, is everyone okay with
But
moving?
not me. Yeah.
Right, not Sebastian, but everyone else okay with moving forward with the changes, making the ampersand and taking out the hash marks, wrinkles, whatever you want to call them, and fixing the spacing in the end.
And the image from number 4?
Yep, and the image from number 4.
Thank you.
I see Bill and Counselor Humphrey and Counselor Maliki. Ryan, are you okay?
You're asking folks to raise their hands if they're
Yep,
okay.
if you can raise your hands or either virtual or literal hand, just to make sure we can move forward. Sebastian, can you actually stop sharing? Okay. So is everyone okay with it?
What you got? 4, and you had, are you okay?
Yep, I'm okay. Ryan, are you okay?
Looks like Ryan and Jim are not okay.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to clarify what the image from number 4 means, because I think that was from a draft.
Yeah, my understanding was we're going with the image, the center image that was presented. I don't think we're going back to the drawing board on.
We're not going back to drawing board, but I think in number 4, so what Sebastian did was took number 2, how the water was represented in number 4 is slightly different.
Right.
And I think Sebastian understands what Counselor
Yeah, so
Farrell was saying.
we're gonna, the lines will be less straight. It will add more wiggle to it
Yep.
in order
Thank
to make it feel more like water.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Wiggles are good, wrinkles are bad. Everyone understand?
So
Okay.
Jim and Ryan, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's
I-
not my favorite one, but I'm okay.
I would be an abstention.
Okay, all right.
I'll just abstain just to be consistent, otherwise it's confusing.
All right.
I'm thinking of it as going from working group to the committee, but if the committee is voting, and I don't know, yeah.
Okay. So
All
we
right.
do have approval from the working group and approval from the Programs and Services Committee. It wasn't unanimous. There was no opposition, but there were some abstentions.
Correct.
Is that a fair summary? Everyone comfortable with that summary? Okay.
Thank you all for your hard work and patience.
Yeah, took the words out of my mouth. Thank you. I think that's hard to have us come in at the end and critique different components like that, but
It
y'all
showed us
handled it with
working
grace.
together, which is nice. So thank you.
Okay,
Go
Councilor.
ahead, Councilor Makley. Yep.
To Councilor Malachi's point about gathering public input, I would like to request if this be distributed and we can encourage public feedback before the full council votes on it so that the public can weigh in on it too. I mean, I personally feel pretty good about this one, but I definitely want to have public input before a full council vote. Even just over email, if that's possible.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a formal process to do that, but I think councilors can certainly use their listserv. Hattie, I don't know if the mayor wants to include it in a newsletter or things like that, but
Put it on
certainly the informal channels.
Facebook groups and other social media too.
Yeah, you can encourage people to email the council.
I just,
We'd
So
love to get emails.
everyone should email you.
The council.
Yeah.
Just make sure we get like the clean.
Yes, obviously, yeah.
version.
Yep.
Yeah, the explicit request was for the mayor, if she was willing to do that, as she's done for other things before it gets to a full council vote.
Okay.
Okay, I think that concludes our business.
Sorry, I
Sebastian,
just
go
want,
ahead.
I just want some clarity. So when, in theory, I just want to make sure I'm getting the timing right. When in theory would this be going up for the vote? Just so I can understand how quickly I need to work in order to move things forward.
So
Yeah,
full
what's next?
council, go ahead.
Go ahead, is it February 3rd? Is that the next council meeting?
Yes, the date of the full council meeting is February 3rd.
So the Friday packet would be January 31st?
Correct.
If that's not doable for you, Sebastian, we have procedural options to say that we're not ready to actually vote on it at that meeting.
Okay. I will do my best. I guess the next question is, how long are you expecting the public to have to vote on it?
Well, it wouldn't be a vote. It would just be them
Or
emailing in
provide
comments to say, yes or no, basically.
And that's fine. I just want to make sure that if it's like, if I get it 4 days before, I don't want folks on the council or who are present saying, there wasn't enough time. So I just want to make sure, is there a certain
Thanks
amount
for
of time
asking
that
that
people are
question.
expecting? Just so for clarity.
My assessment is that would probably be another situation where if people on the council felt that there had not been enough time for the public to email in, there would be a consensus to delay it over to the next meeting, and that would just give people more time to look at it.
Do we need to put that pressure on Sebastian, or can we just schedule it for the post February 2nd council meeting?
I mean,
Just a lot of pressure.
if the committee's moved on this, it will come up at the next council meeting, but if we want to charter it or, put it on second call or whatever, delay it 2 weeks, we can certainly do that, and that's not a problem. But
So
I think
I'm going to try to have it no later than Monday, just so
Okay.
everybody knows. I mean, looking at my schedule, I think that's doable. I'm not going to hold my feet to the fire beyond, you never know, but I do have a kid with the flu at the moment, but I think that's doable.
I think it depends on how comfortable we feel with the time between the version that's going to be put out and the next meeting. If it's, say 3 days or 4 days, then the question is that enough time to give the public, time to react before a vote? And if it's not, then I think we should try to put it off.
Well, we can make that judgment. I think.
Go ahead. I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. Sebastian, thank you. You know, I think Monday is certainly plenty of time. Some of this is not on you. It'll be a question of when the mayor puts it out or when folks put it out. I'm still getting emails about things we voted on in November, so it's not going to be, you know, a timeline that things happen and then all the votes come in or the comments come in. So we'll just sort of wing it. We'll make that assessment going into the council meeting. Maybe the members of the programs and services can just kind of mention to each other, do we think we've got sufficient feedback, or do we think we've heard from the folks we think want to weigh in, and then decide whether to postpone it by one meeting or anything. Okay. Again, yeoman's work. Thank you all very much for your work. Volunteer work. We know how that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian, for being so accommodating with all of our different processes.
Not a problem. My pleasure.
And we have our own SEAL team, right?
Good.
That was
Good.
great.
Field Team 13. Great.
Great.
All right.
Thank
All right,
you.
with that, I think we will adjourn. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.